following show is controversial and contains content you may find offensive. Listener discretion is advised.
98FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
Good morning. It is... What day is it today? Oh, it's Wednesday. I'm Adrian Kennedy, and between now and midday today, this is 98FM's Dublin Talks, the talk and phone-in show for Dubliners, where we discuss and debate the issues of the day with you, our listener. And by the way, if there's a topic you're talking about among your friends and you think we need to be talking about, why don't you get in contact with us? Dublin Talks at 98fm.com is our email address. Now, if you want to react to anything you hear on today's programme, you can send us a text, a WhatsApp, or a WhatsApp voice note to 0877 98 98 98, or you can call us on 6797 981. In just a moment, the Anna Kriégel murder trial came to a conclusion yesterday with guilty verdicts for both boys. Our court reporter Frank Graney will be filling us in on exactly what happened yesterday, and it doesn't make good listening, I have to say. It's shocking. The whole case is just so sad. And we're going to be following that on with a conversation about the issue of bullying among children and isolation. We'll be hearing from a mother whose 12-year-old, like Anna Kriégel, has no friends and is being ostracised in her class. Now, this message is very, very upsetting, I have to say. It's about a 12-year-old just finishing primary school who has no friends. And it's one of the saddest things that's come out of the whole Kriégel case, where a young fella knocks on her door and she's delighted with life that actually somebody called for her, to the point that her mother immediately went, uh-oh, there's something up here, because nobody ever calls for her. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about isolation and bullying directly after Frank's report in a couple of minutes. We're also going to be talking a little bit later on about things that do your head in about going to a gig. One of our listeners was at the Pink gig last night and wasn't impressed by the behaviour of people around her. We'll find out what that story is all about between now and midday today. We have a busy programme for you. As I said, I'm going to be reading an email that we got last night from a lady called Christine, who found the whole Anna Kriégel case particularly upsetting because a similar thing is happening to her 12-year-old daughter, in that she is isolated. She is ostracised by her class. She has no friends. And she's very, very upset about it. We'll be talking about that. I'll read her full email in a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to just fill us all in on the various aspects of the Anna Kriégel case and the verdict yesterday. And in particular, and you'll hear this in just a moment, I'm going to put this to Frank. If you are one of the people who has chosen today to publish a photograph of one or both of the boys in this case, you are setting yourself up for serious, serious trouble. Okay? And we'll explain why in a couple of minutes. And that is a very serious warning to you, that if you have decided to publish on social media either the names or the photographs of one or both of the boys involved in this case, you are in for potential very serious trouble. So be warned. Frank Graney joins me on the line. He's our court reporter. Frank, let me just go back to yesterday. And shortly after lunchtime, explain to me what transpired in court yesterday, Frank.
Well, the jury had been out for quite some time when they eventually came back with their unanimous verdicts yesterday. They had been asked to consider the evidence this day last week, and they had spent almost 14 and a half hours over the course of 5 days of deliberations considering everything in the case against a boy A and boy B. They came back after lunchtime yesterday, and they were sent out again to resume their deliberations after lunch. And the courtroom emptied out, and people weren't really expecting verdicts to come back as quickly after lunch as they did. The courtroom emptied, the Kriégels left, both boys and their families went into their consultation rooms, and the journalists were gathered outside and in the canteen on the second floor. But the courtroom quickly filled when word filtered through that the decision was actually now imminent. The Kriégels were sitting together, as they had done throughout the trial, right next to the jury box. Geraldine and Patrick and his parents held hands tightly. Her eyes, I noticed, Geraldine's eyes remained closed as the jury foreperson revealed their decisions. Both boys sat in other parts of the courtroom separately. They weren't required to sit in the dock. At the beginning of the trial, the judge told them that they didn't have to sit in the dock because of their age. Certain allowances were made. I suppose he tried to run the Central Criminal Court as closely to the Children's Court as possible, so he and the lawyers in the case were not wearing their traditional robes and wigs throughout either. So boy B was sitting in the back bench of the public gallery, flanked by his mother and father. They were holding hands as the verdicts were read out. Boy A then was down at the back of the courtroom, and he was doing the same with his parents as the verdicts were called out. And after the jury foreperson had confirmed that the boys had been found guilty of the charges they faced, boy A of murder and of aggravated sexual assault, and boy B of murder, making them both the youngest convicted murderers in the history of the state. They were clearly very emotional scenes at that point then. Geraldine Kriégel reopened her eyes, I noticed, and she held herself, and so did Patrick, with great dignity. Even at that stage, you can only imagine the emotion that was charging through them after this harrowing ordeal had come to some sort of a conclusion for them. There's still a while to go, obviously, with sentencing, but with the verdicts coming in yesterday, they held themselves with such dignity. That was something that one of the defence barristers touched on in his closing speech to the men and women of the jury, the grace that they had conducted themselves throughout what must have been a very difficult trial for them. Boy A, I noticed, rested his head on his mother's shoulder. She was crying, wiping away tears with a tissue. And boy B then, who again was sitting in the public gallery with his parents, his father became quite upset. He stormed out of the courtroom, slammed the door behind him. He did return moments later, and there were obviously more emotional scenes then as the boys were taken to custody for the first time. So that's how things transpired.
You were talking about the grace and dignity of Anna's parents. There wasn't such grace and dignity from boys B's father with the outbursts in court.
Well, you know, these circumstances are very, very difficult for all involved, and you have to feel some element of sympathy and empathy for the boys' parents, because they weren't the ones on trial, and so often is the case with these kinds of cases, murder trials before the Central Criminal Court. It's not just about the people in the dock or the person whose life has been taken in such a violent way. The crossfire extends so much wider, and his parents obviously are deeply affected by what happened, and so too are the parents of both the boys. Yes, boy B's father did have some sort of an outburst at the back of the courtroom, and did leave, slamming the door behind him, but he did come back, and he was with his son as he was, just before he was led away. Both he and his wife were embracing him tightly before it was time for him to go to Oberstown Detention Centre, which is where he and boy A spent last night for the first time.
Now, unlike an adult in a similar situation, the boys weren't taken in a prison van, they were escorted by the Gardaí, is that right?
Yes, so in ordinary circumstances, a prisoner would be taken by prison van to their respective facility, but yesterday arrangements were made whereby the Gardaí transported them to Oberstown Detention Centre. They'll be brought back to the Central Criminal Court, obviously, for their sentence hearing that's due to take place on July 15th. The judge yesterday, or in an ordinary situation, if these were adults that were tried and convicted for murder, the judge would have very little option but to hand down the mandatory life sentence for murder. But given their age, both 14 years of age, this falls under the Children's Act, so he does have some discretion when it comes to sentencing. He still has that maximum penalty available to him of life imprisonment. But he has requested now a number of reports to be prepared before the sentence hearing next month. He has asked for probation reports, psychiatric reports, school reports, basically anything that will assist him in arriving at appropriate sentences for the two boys. He told the parents yesterday that he would hear evidence from them if they wish to give some from the witness box, obviously. And as parents, Geraldine and Patrick will be given an opportunity to deliver victim impact statements if they so wish, and that will obviously be something that he will take into account as well when it comes to sentencing.
Now, another thing that people don't quite understand, particularly when two boys have been found guilty of such a heinous crime, is the whole issue of anonymity and the fact that these boys will retain their anonymity regardless of the sentence handed down to them.
Yes, their anonymity was protected throughout. Again, it's because this falls under the Children's Act. So we were not, and still are not, allowed name them or reveal. It goes further than that. We weren't allowed to reveal any piece of information that might lend somebody to figure out who they are. The same was applicable to the various children witnesses who gave evidence via video link throughout the trial. That protection remains, even though they have been convicted of murder. It will remain even after they've been sentenced, and more than that, it will remain after they come of age, after they turn 18. Their identities will be protected for life. That's a
and Frank, is there a sanction that the court can hand down to somebody who does identify these boys on, for example, social media? I've seen them identified on social media today.
It's something I haven't seen myself, but certainly I know if myself, yourself, or any of our colleagues were to do that, we would certainly bear the consequences of the court. We'd be held in contempt of court, but it's a criminal offence, to reveal their identities, and people should be aware of that. You may remember another case that I covered last year, the Belfast rape trial, where the identity of the complainant was protected for very different reasons. But her identity was revealed apparently online, and prosecutions were taken against the people who revealed her identity online. So people need to be very aware of that. I haven't seen anything on social media, as you suggested, but if people are identifying the boys online, they will be prosecuted, they will be brought before the courts, and they need to be aware of that.
Okay, now, Frank, no sooner was the trial concluded yesterday than it was revealed some of the evidence that was submitted to court in the absence of the jury. So therefore, we haven't heard about this evidence before now, and the jury didn't either. Give me an example of some of the stuff that wasn't allowed to be admitted into evidence.
Sure. Well, firstly, it's important to note out that this isn't unusual. This happens in every criminal trial where there will be legal argument issues that have to be thrashed out in the absence of the jury. And then the judge will decide if there's an issue over a piece of evidence that the prosecution poses to introduce, or indeed the defence poses to introduce. If there is an objection, the judge will ultimately rule on whether that evidence will be allowed. And clearly, if the judge rules it as inadmissible, it's something that doesn't feature in the jury deliberation. So it's something they will not be aware of, and we are not allowed to reveal those details until after the event. So some of the evidence that was held in legal argument in this particular case, there was some evidence in relation to purported trauma that boy B had experienced after witnessing what had happened to Anna Kriégel at the house. Now, his lawyers, unsuccessfully as it turns out, tried to introduce evidence from a psychologist who found that he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder after witnessing what he claimed to have seen in the house on May 14th last year. And he wanted to use that as an explanation. The lawyer wanted to use that as an explanation for the lies that boy B told in the aftermath. And there were an awful lot of lies that he told his parents, lies that he told Gardaí, particularly during his cautioned interviews after his arrest and his rearrest. The judge ruled that evidence to be inadmissible. He said it was up to the jurors to decide on if he told lies, firstly, but also why he told the lies. His barrister wanted the expert to explain how trauma affects a young person like him. He described him as an articulate and a bright young person, but he described him as socially naive, claimed that he exhibited signs of PTSD when discussing what happened to Anna during their consultations. that he didn't have a habit of seeking help, that he was absolutely gripped by terror, told him he was afraid of boy A and that he needed to do what he said. Because of that, he was terrified of jail. He also gave him more detail than he gave Gardaí during his interviews. He described seeing Anna gasping and struggling before everything stopped, and described seeing her clothes being ripped and seeing a boy A stand up with his pants open. There was no signs of a psychopath personality, according to this particular expert, no overt interest in violence. But all of that evidence was not heard by the men and women of the jury. That would not have featured in their deliberations because the judge deemed it to be inadmissible. There was an application granted for both boys to be excluded from sitting through the post-mortem evidence, the evidence of the now retired state pathologist, Professor Mary Cassidy, who took a number of hours to present her report to the men and women of the jury. Such was the extent of the injuries to Anna Kriégel. Also, thousands of pornographic images, we heard, some of them violent, were found on a number of mobile phones belonging to boy A. Among some online searches were child pornography, animal pornography, the dark web. The name Anastasia was used in one particularly vulgar internet search. These searches, we heard, took place 9 months before he murdered Anna. His defence barrister claimed they'd been taken out of context. The judge agreed that they were not relevant, and if they were shown to the jurors in their entirety, and they would have had to have been shown to the jurors for them to establish relevance, he felt that it would have been highly prejudicial, so they were also excluded.
One of the aspects of this case, Frank, and something that I'm going to focus on in a moment, is the whole area, well, not specifically about this case, but in general terms, is the whole area of bullying and how this young girl was marginalised and quite desperately, badly bullied during her young school life.
That's right. Geraldine Kriégel, Anna's mother, when she gave evidence, she spoke about her daughter, the fact that she'd been adopted from her homeland of Russia when she was just 2.5 years of age. They brought her back to Ireland and gave her a very good and happy childhood. But we heard that one of her teachers, her primary school teachers, contacted her just before she moved to secondary school, and she said that she had some concerns for Anna's transition to secondary school level. She described her as a very vulnerable and naive person, and she felt that she may be subjected to some bullying in secondary school, and indeed she was. Anna was a little bit different. She was a lot taller, for starters, than her peers. Boy B, in one of his guard interviews, when he was asked about Anna, he described her as a weirdo, and he said that she had no friends. Now, let's not focus on the derogatory terms that Boy B used in his guard interviews, because he said an awful lot of more very hurtful things. But Geraldine did paint her daughter as a loner, was the word that she used, a vulnerable person, somebody who craved friendship but didn't have any friendships. And she spoke about the bullying that she experienced not only at school but also online. And this is a very, very important discussion that we should all be having with ourselves today, especially in light of what happened. It's a conversation that we should be having every day. Children should be so alive to this fact, the issue of online bullying, because it's no longer the case that if you're bullied at school, and I think we've all experienced bullying in some shape or form throughout our childhood, but we had the benefit of being able to go home and close our door behind us and feel protected and safe at home. Anna Kriégel didn't have that, despite her mother's best efforts. Anna Kriégel was bullied endlessly online through the various social media networks that she was on. Her mother used to take her electronic devices every night, and she would insist on Anna handing over her passwords. She said Anna wasn't happy doing that, but that she did realise that it was for her own protection and that she would scroll through those. And she did give some details of the bullying that Anna experienced online. I won't go through it on air, but some very hurtful things were said. Some very nasty things were said. She had a YouTube channel whereby one person said he was going to execute her. There were actually threats to her life online. A 14-year-old girl, a beautiful 14-year-old girl with a whole life ahead of her, and this is what she was subjected to. So, aside from the horror of the case and the harrowing details that were heard over the 6 to 7 weeks, it took the prosecution to present its case to the men and women of the jury. One feature that I think will live long in everyone's memory is that, how dangerous the online world can be when it comes to bullying, because, as I mentioned earlier, you're no longer safe when you leave the classroom. Anna was bullied endlessly. All she wanted was friends. And I thought one thing that Geraldine said that was particularly poignant in her evidence when she was asked about the day that Anna went missing, May 14th of last year, she said that she returned home from work that evening, and she asked her husband Patrick where Anna was, and he said that she had left, that Boy B had called for her, and that she'd gone out with him. And I thought it was particularly poignant that Geraldine Kriégel said that she was immediately concerned when she learned this, not just because Boy B had called to the house, but because she said nobody called for Anna. She had no friends. Nobody called for Anna. So she was immediately concerned. She tried desperately to get a hold of Anna. She sent her one text saying, "Come home right now or I'll call the guards." And she did say that she was, torn between being concerned but also being overprotective. As she said, that was a thought that went through her head. But sadly, her instinct and her intuition was correct, because when she went out looking for her daughter, a short time after she returned home that evening, the prosecution said that her daughter was already dead in that abandoned house in Lucan.
Such a sad story, and that's, as I said, probably want to focus on now about bullying. But Frank, just to wrap up, when are these two boys due back in court for sentencing?
The sentence hearing has been set for July 15th. So as I mentioned a moment ago, between now and then, they will be assessed and various reports will be made available to the judge. He'll have an awful lot to sift through on July 15th. Submissions will obviously be made from all sides. So it's hard to tell, but I'd imagine it's unlikely he'll pass down sentence on July 15th. He may do so, but he may want some time to reflect on all of the information that he's given on that date. So it's likely to be put back to another date. But July 15th is the next date that the boys will be in court. All
right, 98FM's courts correspondent Frank Rainey, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and thank you very much indeed for your extremely concise reporting for the duration of the trial. It's kept us all informed as to what's been going on. Thank you very much indeed, Frank.
Thanks, Adrian.
Now, for the next while, I want to focus, I don't want to focus on the case because, I'm looking at the messages that are coming into us. Can I tell you again that it is illegal to identify these two boys. Illegal. It is against the law. And the judge in this particular case will take a very dim view of anybody who publishes the identities of these boys. This judge has already barred one media outlet from covering the case because of a very tenuous link that could possibly have identified the boys. Now, this media outlet didn't identify the boys, but in part of its reporting, it had a very tenuous connection that the judge argued could have led to their identity being revealed. Can I tell you again that I've just seen one Facebook post where somebody has posted a photograph of these two boys, an alleged photograph of these two boys, and it has been shared over 100 times. You are really looking for trouble. You could be, if you're the person who posted that originally, you could be done for contempt of court. It is illegal to identify these two boys. Much and all, as I know that might be very frustrating to many of you, it is against the law. And the judge in this case will take a very, very dim view of anybody who publishes the identities of these boys. That's a warning, because this judge has shown that he will not accept anything that leads to the identity of these two boys. Anyway, that's just a by the way, because I want to talk to you about one aspect of that particular case, and one that I find particularly tragic and sad, is that this young girl appeared to be a loner who craved friendship, and one of the things that alerted Anna's mother to something being up is that nobody ever called for her because she had no friends. And when somebody called to her door and she left with that person, that alerted her mother that something wasn't up. And this young girl, it seems, had no friends and was completely ostracised, was constantly bullied both online and was left alone. And that's what we want to focus on now. As parents, what do you do if your children has no friends? They're left out of everything. They walk home alone from school every day. They don't pal with anyone in class. Now, it's a worry that many parents have. And what, if anything, can a school do if a child is being left out of everything, is being literally ostracised? We've this heartbreaking Facebook mail last week, and we decided not to cover it until the trial was over. After the break, I'm going to read an email from the mother of a 12-year-old girl who, like Anna, has no friends in her school. She's left out of everything, and this is worrying her mother desperately. I'll read Christine's email straight after the break.
98FM's
Dublin Talks
with Des Kelly Interiors. For all the latest trends in carpets, vinyls and wood flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less.
98FM.
And this is Adrian Kennedy with you until midday today. Now, I want you to have a listen to this. This arrived into our inbox last week, and we deliberately held off on reading it because we wanted to wait until the conclusion of the Anna Kriégel case. It's an email from a lady called Christine, and here's what Christine writes. Guys, like any other parent, I am horrified by the Anna Kriégel story. It has hit me extremely hard because I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she is going through many of the same things that poor girl did. She literally has no friends in school. She's always had problems making friends because she's very shy. None of the girls talk to her during break time. None will walk home with her. She's invited them to our house, and none of them have come. She has nobody bar me, and this worries me sick. I've asked the school to help, and they've said there's nothing they can do because it's not bullying. But the girls in her class don't want anything to do with her, and this breaks my heart. I hate the thought that she is isolated from her class. I cry in bed most nights over worry. Have you any advice as to who I can turn to? Should I talk to the parents of the girls in her class? There is nothing worse than seeing that your child has no friends. I am crying even as I'm writing this. And like I said, this is a message that we received last week, long before the Anna Kriégel trial came to its conclusion yesterday. But the evidence from her mother primarily presented to court was that she was a young lady who craved friendship, and one of the things that alerted Anna's mother that something wasn't right is that somebody actually called for her, because nobody ever called for her. And that obviously is what Christine is on about. Let's have a listen to... I'd like to hear from you on this on 6797 981. You can text or WhatsApp 0877 98 98 98. In an age where we have very justifiable campaigns like, for example, the Me Too movement, saying that this sort of behaviour is not acceptable, that sexual predators are not acceptable anymore. And, you know, we see massive worldwide campaigns like this going on. We see nothing when it comes to bullying. 30 years ago, I was bullied in school. I hated school. I despised it because I just dreaded going to it every day. And 30 years later, it's worse than ever. And that's what I want to talk to you about. What is being done, if anything, to deal with bullying? Let's have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note that has been sent in to us from Raymond.
Adrian, the teachers need to be stepping in here, or even more, the principal needs to be stepping in here if they see a kid that's being left out of everything in the school. But they're there to guide these kids. They have to be guiding them, not only teaching them maths or English or history. They need to be guiding them about life lessons and about being nice, to treat other people nice, and it's not okay to leave people out and make people feel shit about themselves. You know, the teachers think they're just there to throw out a few sums or get you a pass in an English test. They should be there to guide these children, to make sure that they're treating everybody equal, and that and that they're just not being horrible to people. You know what I mean?
All right. Now, just because somebody is being ostracised, is being left out of everything, the argument is, well, that's not bullying. I think it is. It's a more difficult form of bullying, but it is bullying nonetheless when a child is being left out like this. Niamh, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Niamh?
Hi, Adrian. How are you?
Good, thank you. This sort of thing did happen to your daughter.
It did, yeah. I feel so sorry for that woman. That just brought it all home to me. And you're right, it is bullying, but it's a very subtle form of bullying. It's harder to pinpoint that form of bullying because
and it's also harder to deal with, I would have thought.
Very hard to deal with. I mean, when she said about going to the parents, I'm not sure that would be the right thing to do. That might make it worse because then you can't force the kids to want to be friends with her. And I think if the kids felt that they were being in trouble for this, they might make it worse for her daughter in private. And you have to remember that now we're in the age of online as well. So the mother, just a little heads up from my experience, watch her phone. Just watch her phone. Just watch social media. If she's on it, watch it. I wish I had. I wish I'd known back four years ago to watch.
So tell me what your daughter went through then.
She was very badly bullied. She was called all sorts of names.
And what age was she?
She was just doing her junior cert.
Okay, right.
So she, all sorts of names. She started a new school. She thought this was going to be the best school. She was so excited about going there. It wasn't. Obviously, it's not going to name the school, but the school did nothing. They said it wasn't happening on school grounds because it was a lot of it was on social media. She got to the point where she was hurting herself and ended up in hospital over it and couldn't sit her junior cert. Like the bullies did. They were fine.
Wow. Right.
They sat their junior cert, and I'm sure they did very well. I don't know.
And I have to say, I do feel for schools in terms of dealing with this. Firstly, as we said, you can't force children to, befriend a certain person in a class. And we all knew, when we think back on it, we all knew somebody who was the loner in the class, who didn't play with anybody. But, I'm just thinking of the case and the evidence that Anna Kriegel's mother gave to the court, which was that she did have no friends. She craved friendship. And the alarm bells went off for her mother when she found out that somebody actually knocked on the door to ask her to come out.
I think that was the saddest part.
Yeah.
And I think that although these two boys that are now facing justice, which is fantastic, but there's a lot more people that have a lot to answer to. And in general, not just with her case, in general, they have things to answer for. And perhaps with this particular mother who's so upset over her 12-year-old, the only thing I could think of would be that if she could think of anything that her daughter enjoyed doing and put her maybe into a club, the friends she makes don't have to be in her school. If she had some friends even outside school, it could give her a little bit of confidence in school. School is only X amount of hours a day, and it's awful if she's being excluded. But if she had something to look forward to outside school and knew that when she left school, there were other people from maybe other schools that she could be friends with, it could give her that sort of, well, look, I can get through this, and then I can go play with these guys, or I can hang out with these guys who are my friends. Because like-minded kids tend to gravitate toward each other. And if she was into, say, martial arts or boxing or computers or whatever, if she could find a club for her, something that she could just meet kids that are like her. Because, there's nothing wrong with being shy.
No, nothing whatsoever, no.
She's just a quiet little girl, and that's okay too. And I just really feel for this woman because I wish somebody had sort of helped us back then if we'd known what was going on. And that's the only thing I'll say to her. Just please watch her phone, watch social media, because the insidious nature of bullying nowadays is awful. And they're saying stuff and they're doing stuff, and it's been
and you
spread
see,
away.
it does, like I said, I get how this is very difficult for schools. Obviously, if the bullying is happening within the school grounds, it's perhaps a little bit easier for them to deal with. But when that bullying is relentless and is online and it's on Snapchat and other social media outlets, it is much more difficult for the school to do anything about it. And I do feel for them. But it does raise the conversation about how we get that through to kids, that this is not acceptable. It is not okay to ostracise other children like this. It is not okay to bully children like this. That this sort of behaviour can be a life sentence for the person who's at the receiving end of it.
Well, I think, to be honest, I think that, I don't want to use Anna's name, but this girl she's a warning for every single child, bully or bullied. And she should be used in every single school, and her name should be, this is what it leads to. And Anna is an incredibly public case, but there's been many kids that have hurt themselves, ended up in hospital and worse over bullying. And what really bugged me was that, schools will expel or suspend a student if they have the wrong haircut. And if they smoke in the school uniform, if they're in secondary, if they're caught smoking in the school uniform off school grounds, they'll be expelled. But they won't touch a bully. Because it's just, I understand what you're saying about how hard it is for the schools, but literally when you're told by schools, nothing we can do. It's like, come on, do something. These are children in your care. They're in your uniform. They're representing your school. But you're telling us you can do nothing? They have to do something. We have to have...
And I agree with you, Niamh, that this tragic case should be, and I hope it is, the start of a debate about, for once and for all, dealing with this. We're all about telling kids, telling teenagers about consent and all of that, and that's all fine. But this is another really serious issue that many kids have to deal with that I firmly believe is not being dealt with properly. And as I said, I was at school 30 years ago. I was bullied. I hated school, couldn't wait to get out of it. And 30 years later, it's not got any better. In fact, it's gotten worse.
You could come home, and you're like me, you're a similar age to me. And if we were bullied, we could come home and we could shut our front door, shut our bedroom door, and at least we had 8 hours or 10 hours peace. These kids have no peace now because they open up social media and they are seeing the worst, awful stuff said about them. All right,
Niamh, I need to go to a quick break, but I'll come back to you in a moment. And after that break as well, I'm also going to be talking to a lady called Fiona. And to protect the identity of Fiona's son, we've not just changed her name, we've disguised her voice to protect her son's identity. But Fiona, I'm going to talk to you straight after the break. And your son, 13 years of age, spends lunchtime on his own and has nobody to play with during the summer months.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to hear your story straight after the break. This is 98 FM.
98 FM's
Dublin Talks
with Des Kelly Interiors. For all the latest trends in carpets, vinyls and wood flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less.
98 FM.
If there's one thing that I hope out of the tragedy of the case, the Anna Kriégel case, if there's one thing I hope that some good comes out of it, that good would be a national conversation about bullying, about isolation of children, and for once and for all, for us to deal with this really, really hurtful, difficult issue that so many of our children have to live with. I hope that is the legacy of this Anna Kriégel case, that we have that conversation and that for once and for all we deal with this issue that, as I said a moment ago, is getting worse, not better. Fiona, tell me about your son.
Hi, my son is 13 now. This has been the case since he was in junior infant. He finds it very, very difficult to make friends. He'd love to have a good friend, but he's so intelligent. He's really, really highly intelligent that he, from the age of 5 or 6, his vocab and all was a lot more than what the kids around his own age were, and they couldn't understand him. They didn't get him. To the point that I used to go down at lunchtime and look over the wall to see if he was on his own, or to see if he was playing with anybody or if anybody was bothering with him. So hard. So hard because school. He's alone at lunchtime. And he's no friends to call over the summer.
And when you would look over the school wall, you'd spot your little boy, and you'd spot him on his own.
Yeah. Now, I had a lot of friends of the parents in the school, and they did kind of, ask their sons to keep an eye on him, and it was a little bit easier in primary school. But I sent him to the school where he didn't know anybody because he needed to break away. He needed to break away from those boys and start fresh. Now, he loves school. He absolutely hates missing school. He won't miss school. He adores being in school, and he's great in class. He gets along great with adults. He loves adults, and he can talk to adults, but the kids just don't get him. They don't get him at all, and he finds it very hard. He won't approach any kids. He won't go and just join. He doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know how to just, insert himself into a conversation or anything, and he just kind of goes out at lunchtime and goes and sits by the tennis court and spends his break there. That the teachers do know, and they have spoken, and they are trying to keep an eye out on him and trying to get him involved in stuff, but it's just so hard for him. It really is, and the whole summer now trying to get him out of his room and get him he likes to do stuff with me and stuff, and it's just hard when you work. And
let me ask you then, Fiona, during I find the conversation just very difficult because I just listening to the way you described looking over the school wall and seeing your son on his own is heartbreaking, I have to say. And it just brings up this... what Anna's mother said in court, that she was a loner who craved friendship and that nobody ever called for her. And it's heartbreaking stuff, to the point that when this young fella knocked on her door, it was like all her Christmases had come at once. Somebody wants to talk to me. It was... Yeah. What about during the summer months, Fiona? We're almost into the school... Well, for primary school, we're almost into the school holidays. How will he spend his summer?
For the last few weeks, because he's just finished first year, he's just kind of spent him on his computer and stuff, and he has a sister, and he loves spending time with her, but she's 12, and she's completely different to him. She loves being with her friends and stuff, and it's just, I'd have to beg her to spend some time with him, because when they are together, they get on great, but he just craves her attention. He really does, because he really does just want somebody there for him, but he just doesn't know how to go about it, So it's a case of me he likes to do stuff with me, so I have to kind of try and, make sure that I can do stuff with him and just with him to give him that bit, because otherwise he'll spend the whole summer just sitting in his room, basically.
God, that has to be soul destroying.
It really is. It really is.
And does he have any friends around where you live?
No. I mean, the next door neighbour has someone the same age. He's a year ahead of him. And they're nice kids. Nobody's mean to him. Nobody, said anything horrible to him. It's just a case
but they're just not bothered with him either.
Yeah. Because he's not into sports and stuff, and it's trying to get him involved in that, and he's not into that kind of stuff. He's into, he loves maths and he loves computers and stuff like that, so that's what he's into,
Listening to what you're saying, Fiona, you worry sick about him.
Oh, it's horrible, it is. It really is horrible. It's horrible.
When you heard the details of this Anna Kriégel case, and in fact the message that we got earlier on, or last week, about the 12-year-old daughter going through the exact same thing that your son is going through, just being ostracised, just having no friends, this obviously struck a chord with you.
It really does, and I know exactly how the mother feels, but you kind of want to, nearly bring up the parents and just say, make your son play with my child. It's just, but you can't do that. You can't force.
No, of course not. No, and as I said, I don't know if bullying is the word that you can use for it, because it's not strictly bullying per se, but it has to have. I mean, I mentioned I was bullied in school, but I did have friends at home in our housing estate. I was sent to a different school that all my friends didn't go to, but at least when I came home, I had friends at home. I just didn't have any in school. And your son, it's even worse in that he's no friends anywhere.
Yeah. And it's just, it's not good. Now that he's older, he kind of sees that he's different, that he stands out. He stands out. Well, academically, he would stand out. But he knows, he sees now that, he should have some friends like that. Everyone else has some friends, even going in ones or twos, or when he goes on his school tours. And I say, who are you sitting beside? I don't know who it was. And I just say, why don't you just talk? Why don't you just build up a conversation? And he just doesn't. He doesn't even know. He didn't even know who he was sitting beside on his first school tour. This year.
That's heartbreaking. It really is. Fiona, I need to take a very quick commercial break and allow you to compose yourself. And Steve and Sinead, I'm sorry for keeping you waiting so long, but I'll come back to you straight after the break. This is 98FM's Dublin Talks. I'm Adrian Kennedy, and we're going to continue this just for another couple of minutes after the break.
98.
Live and exclusive to Dublin's 98FM, Monday through Friday between 10 and midday. This is Adrian Kennedy. You're with 98FM's Dublin Talks. And Trish is here with Wednesday's top headlines.
Thanks, Adrian. The judge will be able to consider a range of factors, including psychological and school reports, when sentencing the two teenage boys convicted of murdering Kildare schoolgirl Anna Kriégel. Both boys have spent their first night in a detention centre before their sentence hearing next month. The mandatory life sentence doesn't apply because they're under 18, but it can still be imposed by the judge. Thousands of patients could have surgeries cancelled tomorrow as up to 10,000 healthcare support workers go on strike. Porters, cleaners, chefs and maternity care assistants are among the staff who are to walk off the job at 38 hospitals and healthcare facilities in a row over pay. Trinity College has ranked in 108th place in the QS World University Rankings. Despite slipping from 104th, it's still Ireland's leading university. And Netflix's new comedy flick Murder Mystery has been watched by nearly 31 million accounts since it was first available just 3 days ago. It stars Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler, who get framed for killing a billionaire's uncle while on holiday. And now you're up to date on 98.
98FM's Dublin Talks with Adrian Kennedy.
Well, good morning. How are you this morning? I'm Adrian Kennedy, and between now and midday today, this is 98FM's Dublin Talks. We're here until midday today, and we're in the middle of a conversation all to do with what I hope will be this young lady's legacy. I'm talking, of course, of Anna Kriégel, and I hope one of her legacies will be that we, as a nation, have the conversation about bullying, about children being ostracised, and somehow get the message through to our kids that this is not acceptable anymore. It is not okay. And we need to really drum that message in, because I don't believe it has been. I don't believe it is being. And we've been talking with Fiona, who, as you've just heard, her son, very similar to what we heard about Anna Kriégel, that he has no friends. Even for the summer months, he has no friends. And, you know, we talk about, one of the things we've gotten very good at in this country is celebrating difference. And, you know, just because somebody is different doesn't mean they're not normal. They are normal, they're just different. And it's something we've gotten very good at, celebrating people's difference. But kids haven't joined the party yet. It really is sad. And Fiona, I have to say, the amount of messages that I'm getting in from people just taken by your story about your son. One person said, I'm a 48-year-old man and I'm in tears listening to that woman's story about her son. You obviously find this extremely difficult to even talk about, let alone deal with.
Yeah, very. Yeah, very hard. It's harder the older he's getting. It's harder.
Wow. And like I said, I hope that this is this young lady's legacy, that this conversation is the conversation we start having about bullying, about kids being ostracised and so on. I mean, you've spoken about sports, you've spoken about what you want to do, to try and encourage them to make friends. But as you said, he just finds it very, very difficult. And obviously then other children find it very difficult to befriend him.
Yes. I mean, he goes to counselling every week, and they are trying to help him socially to kind of bring himself out a little bit more. He's a great kid. He helps kids in class. He likes to see people do well, and he's really good with other kids when he's in class. He's great in school. It's just he just does not know how to approach kids. And I try to tell him that I think that people probably think that you don't want them to approach them because they see you standing off on your own, and they probably think that you don't want to be involved. And I just try and ask him to just, to go up and say, hey, like, where are you going for lunch and stuff, and just go with the kids, like, because that's what you do, and he just doesn't get that, just doesn't understand that.
All right, stay there for 1 second, Fiona, and I really appreciate you sharing a very difficult story. And I know there are parents with children just like your son who can relate to everything that you've said. Sinead, you are an SNA at a school here in Dublin, and you believe that schools could be and should be doing a lot more.
Yeah, I work in a secondary school, been there a good few years, and what happens is when the income of first years for the following September, from about the November before they come in, we set up a transfer programme, and what that involves is gathering about 4 or 5 children from different schools and putting them with a 4th or 5th year student, having a little breakfast, getting to know the school, getting to know the rules of the school, and just getting, children that are coming from a school that maybe nobody else is coming from, getting them talking to different people and making sure that they're very comfortable for the following September.
Right, okay. So, and I mentioned this already, 30 years ago I was bullied in school, and 30 years later, not only is it not getting any better, it's actually getting significantly worse from what I can see. Would you agree with that?
Well, in the school I'm in, no. Such as social media, if there's a problem with social media in the school and the school finds out, it is a complete and utter stance that this won't be accepted, and we'll come up with different ways for the child to get away from social media or find a way to maybe talk to whatever person, obviously not the student, but teachers will get involved, school counsellors, year heads, everything like that. And then in SPHE class as well, or tutor class, the first thing that they would do would be, including everybody, making sure that nobody's excluded, and what to do in this case. And even the shyest of children in the school that I'm in would have people to talk to.
Which is fantastic, because when I hear the way Fiona described looking over the school wall and seeing her son sitting there on his own is just absolutely heartbreaking, and heartbreaking for any parent to have to witness that. But you're saying in some schools they're dealing with it better than others. Yeah,
I completely agree with that.
And like I said, I hope that's the conversation that we have as a result of this whole tragic case. And Wayne, you're on 98 FM. Hi, Wayne.
How are you, Adrian? How are you?
Good, thank you, Wayne. What did you want to say?
I just texted there when I heard the story about that young chap. I'm willing to help the girl if you want to get my number and pass it on. I'm a GAA coach at a Fingers Club, and I'm willing to take him on if he wants to get into sport or anything. We can try and work somewhere from him.
Because I'm sure you, like me, have been, listening to the way she's described the story. It is heartbreaking to hear, isn't it?
It is indeed. Like, I have 3 young kids, and even if I see my kids now, being left out of a sport, which they're not at the moment. But it's very hard to hear it. But it still upsets a lot of parents. But at the moment, it's hard even to talk about yourself, Adrian. Listen to that kid about what child looking over the wall.
As a matter of interest, Fiona, that's a very decent offer, Wayne, by the way. I don't know if that's of any help or...
Thank you, yeah, I will definitely say it to him.
Okay, well, we'll put you in touch with each other. And thanks very much, Wayne. I really appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, it can be a case, Fiona, of just something clicking with him that he starts to like. And I've often described how when I was a young fella, my saviour was radio. It was just something I was passionate about and threw myself into it, lock, stock and barrel. And that was literally my saviour. It was something I found that I loved and I had an interest in. And somewhere there is that same thing for your son.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. We're trying everything.
And when he finds it, he'll find it. He'll make new friends, and he'll blossom. And I really hope that happens sooner rather than later. And one final call on this, Steve. You believe that it's not up to the schools to teach kids to be nice?
No, your last WhatsApp voicemail really got to me. Like your man was like saying, "Oh, the teachers don't do enough. It's not there just to get them passes on their results or whatever." Well, discipline starts at home. Like that last teacher there that was on, she said about that what they do in her school. Funny enough, my young fella, and they did the exact same thing in his school. Worked great. He was going the first year for the first time, whatever. But like to say that the teachers don't do enough to teach our kids like how to behave, how to treat people, that starts at home.
I agree with all of that. However, schools do see things. Now, I just got a message from Paddy, and I've heard about this in a number of schools. In my child's school, says Paddy, they have a bench called the buddy bench, and if any child sits on it, the other children would see it and talk to the child. So you're basically... It's a child saying, I'm on my own here, I'd like somebody to talk to, and that's a clever idea. But schools see stuff that parents don't see about the behaviour of children.
Yeah, they see two different ends of stories as well, where they might only see one child lashing out because he's only after them, and they don't see the beginning of it. But that's all starts at home. Like, my child wouldn't go to school and bully anyone. Why wouldn't he? Because he knows he wouldn't. He's disciplined at home and he wouldn't get away with it. It's as simple as that. Let's not blame the teachers. Have enough to do instead of saying, well, they need to teach our kids how to behave. No, that's our job. It's not the teacher's job whatsoever at all. Simple.
So, in other words, it's down to parents to have that conversation with their children, to let them know that this is not acceptable behaviour.
After this story, like I've had these conversations with my own child, I would be having another conversation about...
In fact, I do think that this story, difficult and all as it is an ideal excuse to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and teach them, and let them see what's happening and why it happens. Because she was being bullied and she was a lonely child, really. But that's down to the parents, not down to the teachers to bring that up in school. Teachers bring it up to school, you have uproar with parents saying, "Oh, they've no right bringing that up in school," or whatever. That's down to us. It's not the teacher's job. That's a fact.
All right, let me, thanks for your call, Steve. Let me read this message from Nicola. My 13-year-old daughter was bullied in school psychologically. She was laughed at, stared at, left out and physically bullied. She tried to tell her teacher, but the teacher wasn't interested. When they did do something, girls denied everything. And my daughter felt the school sided with the bullies. She felt harmed. I feel school need to do more about social inclusion. I'm going to put her in summer camp so she can try to meet new people, and also he talks about a Big Brother and Big Sister program, which might be an idea. It breaks my heart listening to this from Nicola. Fiona, I have to wrap this up, unfortunately. I could talk about this all day, but all I can say to you is I wish you well in finding that thing for your son that is an outlet for him, that he will meet like-minded children who he will become and can become friends with.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I really appreciate it.
All right, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Such a sad story, it really is. And like I said, risk of sounding like a broken record, let us hope that this starts the conversation about something that needs to be talked about, and that is bullying. By the way, if you or anybody listening has been affected by the issues we've been talking about, I want to give out a free phone number for Childline, which is 1800 666 666. It's an extremely easy number to remember. 1800 666 666, or free text 50101. This is 98 FM. I'm Adrian Kennedy, and we're here until midday today. Now, next on the programme, this is an awful, awful, awful story. And this is something that we have touched on a number of occasions on this programme in the last couple of years. And sadly, I have to talk about it again today. A savage attack took place on Dollymount Strand yesterday morning, during which an owner had to watch her beloved Bichon Frise dog, Teddy, be savaged to death by two bigger dogs before her very eyes. Deirdre Cotter-Daly posted her story to Facebook yesterday, and people are shocked by the brutality of the attack, and also the fact that the owners of the attacking dogs have not yet been found. We're going to hear her entire story straight after the break.
98 FM's Dublin Talks
with Des Kelly Interiors. For all the latest trends in carpets, vinyls and wood flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less. 98 FM.
Now, as I said to you just before the break, a young dog has died after being savagely attacked yesterday on Dollymount Strand. And Deirdre Cotter-Daly posted her story to Facebook yesterday, and people are shocked by the brutality of the attack, and also the fact that the owners of the attacking dogs have yet to be found. And Deirdre joins me on the line. Deirdre, welcome to 98 FM.
Thank you very much, Adrian.
And firstly, my condolences on the loss of Teddy. Teddy's a Bichon Frise.
Yeah.
And we believe you had an extra special bond with him.
Yeah, Teddy is 13 next month. And in 2009, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer and going through chemotherapy, I was very sick for the few months and bedridden, really. And Teddy never left my side. He was with me all the time. When my mother would be over helping, she'd say, Deirdre, we need to take Teddy out of the room so you can sleep better. And if she did remove him from the room, he just sat outside my bedroom door. He just did not want to leave me alone. And he was like that ever since. He's always been with me. He goes everywhere, every day. He goes in the car with me to the bank, the shops, anywhere I'm going. And you know what, this morning, I didn't expect it, but I felt there was a feeling of loneliness with him not here today.
Okay,
and
so
I
take me back.
Realise, yeah.
So you didn't realise?
I didn't realise it was going to hit me like that. That I'm with him so much every day that it's like losing your left arm. It was like a part of me. He was with me all the time. He was my little pal. But I have two dogs. I have a younger guy, our little one, Amber. She's 5. But I walk Dollymount about 3 mornings a week for years. That's what we do, 3 mornings a week, and we've always had lovely, pleasant walks down there. Lots of people down there with little dogs. Everybody keeps to the rules or minds the dog. It's very pleasant. It's only, a handful of times that you come across a dog that might be intimidating. And, I haven't seen or heard any drastic stories before. But do you want me to tell you what happened to me yesterday?
Yes, please. So yesterday morning, you set off for your walk with Teddy and your other dog, Amber.
And Amber, yeah. So she's a little teacup terrier. She's smaller. So Teddy was on his leash. I parked down near St. Anne's Golf Club, that causeway there, and I walked down towards the Sutton direction. We're walking the waterline, just moseying down, beautiful day like today, and Teddy on his leash as always. And then I saw, halfway down the beach, I saw what looked like, so where the sand meets the sand dunes, they had obviously come out from the sand dunes, the grass area, and were just sitting up, the two of them side by side, and their leashes were hanging off their necks, so they were still on them. And, you know, I think people kind of do that because they have, you know, they cover themselves by saying, oh, they got away, or
yes, indeed,
maybe it's easy to grab it by the leash even. But two of them sitting up together, like they were waiting, and they were like really well looked after dogs. They looked gorgeous. I actually thought from a distance they were Labradors, 2 golden Labradors. They were that big, they were golden looking, and then I noticed them coming over towards me. And I always bring a stick with me. So I picked little Amber up in my arms, and she was in my left arm. And the two came over. One came towards me, and I know it was trying to probably get Amber out of my arms. But with the stick, I just fought and fought and fought. I just kept hitting him on the face with the stick to back him off. The other guy went straight in for Teddy, and while I was fighting this other dog, I could hear Teddy crying and screaming and screeching. So when I got the other guy off, myself and Amber, he went over and joined the other dog at Teddy, and the two of them savaged him. They were shaking him, they were ripping him. And all I could think of when I was looking at it, there was nothing I could do. I was screaming, help, help, someone help me, please. I was screaming at the top of my voice, please help me. There's no way that those owners that were in that grass dune, I'm sure they would have been, could not have heard me. I was hoping that an owner would come out and call the dogs off. I wanted it to end. I had the thought, oh, please let Teddy die very quickly, because I knew he wasn't coming back from the way they were savaging him. And I thought, oh God, let him die quickly to stop the pain, the screeching and the crying from him.
Oh my God.
And then I was trying to bash them off with the stick. I was trying to get them off, but the other guy that seemed tougher guy, it didn't have any effect on him at all. And my stick actually broke on his head. So I was left with a weak half stick and thinking, oh my God, I was so vulnerable then. And I didn't know whether they were going to turn on me. There was nothing I could do. I was in the middle of nowhere.
And they literally savaged. Now, we're talking about a Bichon Frise, and literally savaged him to death.
Do nothing. On his legs, potting around. They pounced him, and they ripped him apart, and they shredded him. And I thought, well, it's only later when I was thinking, that could have been a little toddler with me. I don't think that would have, I don't know whether they'd have even noticed the difference there. They just came straight over. One was going towards me, and the other one went straight in for Teddy.
And did you say that they had leads on?
Their leashes were hanging off their collars. Yeah.
Now, so you're standing there watching your dog being savaged, and you're screaming at the top of your voice.
And it's going on and on and on.
You're not far from the sand dunes. You firmly believe that the owners were in the sand dunes somewhere, but nobody came to help you.
Nobody. I was on my own, and I didn't know when it was going to end. It was horrific. It was gruesome. And the only reason they stopped was Teddy stopped crying and went like a rag doll. He just stopped. I thought he was dead. And they just then dropped him. And they jogged off into the sand dunes then, where they came out from. And I was left with, I couldn't put Amber down, because I thought they'll come back for me. I didn't know if they were going to turn around and come back. I didn't know if Amber would run home. She was fine. And I couldn't pick up Teddy because he looked in pieces. I didn't know whether he was even all in one, that I could pick him up. So I kind of ran to these two men that were in the distance. They had about 5 little dogs between them. I ran towards them crying and saying, please help me, help me. So they came up and they said to me, I said, he's dead. And we were just looking at him, and he said, ring the guards. Now, I didn't think 999 would maybe have been that interested in it, but they were so helpful. They were brilliant. They said, we'll get somebody down to straight away. Then, the man said to me, I said, how can I pick him up? Can someone hold my dog? Then they said, you might really need to have a photo of this for evidence, for justice, if this goes any further. The hardest thing I had to do was take that very quick photo, not even barely looking at poor old Teddy. Then I gave the guys Amber, and the man said, you can have my T-shirt. Took his T-shirt off from me. Mm-hmm. I had to put Teddy's skin back on his back because he was raw. It was blood. It was raw. I could see the insides of him. I had to put his skin back up on his back, put the T-shirt over him, and try and lift him without pain, because one of the men thought he could see life in him. He said, I think he's still alive. So I picked him up, and he was, whimpering. And I knew, it was hurting him. but I carried him the best I could up the beach. They carried my other little dog. When I got to the top at the roundabout, there was 3 guards waiting on me. Couldn't have been more helpful. They were so lovely. And Owen Farrell and 2 other people from Raheny Guard Station. One of them drove me in my car because I couldn't put Teddy down. He was in bits. There was blood all coming out of him. And he drove me up to the Raheny Veterinary Hospital. The other 2 guards took Amber for me and followed me up. They went in. They went in ahead of me. They explained, because I was just too distraught. I was in bits. I even showed the guards. I pulled back the T-shirt and showed the injuries because, you think, oh, it's awful and that's horrific. But you need to see. And that's why even yesterday my husband said, you've got to put this up because people are walking their dogs down there and children. They need to know. And I had to...
And this is what the guard said to you?
No, my husband.
Oh, your husband. All right, okay.
You need to put this up for people that are going down today and tomorrow or whatever next week. And I just felt that there was that photo. I only looked at it once, and that was to upload it with the others because I can't look at it anymore. It's just horrific. But I wanted people to actually see what happened to him. Poor Teddy, ripped apart. And if you can't look at it, you can't look at it. But that is what they did to him, and I might need that for evidence later on.
So Teddy has sadly since passed away.
Yeah. So the vet said to me, "It's horrific. Haven't seen injury so bad like this. We can't. It's not looking good for him." So he said. So they said, your best thing is to put him to sleep. So I gathered my son and my daughter and my husband, and we went in to say our goodbyes. They had him, full of morphine and wrapped. They had his little face just revealed. They didn't let us see the rest because he was so bad. So I was able to kiss him, hug him, hold his paws while they injected him, and he went off into sleep. So all I could think was, he's out of the pain then eventually, and that's the only thing now. It's like no more pain. It was just horrific.
And I'm looking at the photograph, and as you said, if you can't watch it, you can't watch it. And my God Almighty, these dogs literally ripped the neck off the dog, pulled his skin. It's a horrific photograph. But the more serious part, well, obviously that's very serious. But here's the thing that that made you publish this online is that we need to find out whose dogs these were. Because it is
where
not.
Were they?
Yeah, where were they? So tell me about the dogs. The 2 dogs themselves were bull mastiffs, were they?
Now, I don't know the exact name, but when I went to try and find the dogs through Google, we were all trying to look for what it was. The best one that came up for me was the bull mastiff. They were well looked after dogs. They were so healthy looking. They were good-looking mastiff dogs, and pit bulls or wherever they are. So they were kind of had white around the face and mouth. And
okay, so the photograph that you published, Deirdre, is close enough to what they look like, is it?
Yeah, the one on the left, the beige guy on the left with the white kind of beige face.
Is very similar to what they look like.
Yeah, it was, and only taller, because I thought they were Labradors, and I knew that one of them, if he got up on me, would have got Amber from me. He was that big. They weren't little. They were big dogs. Big, well-looked-after dogs. And they'd no muzzles. And, that's the law for a certain breed. There's a certain list of breeds that need extra rules, additional rules.
Yes, they're meant to be muzzled, yes.
They're supposed to be muzzled whenever they're in a public place.
That's right.
Always.
Now, okay, like I said, the graphic photograph, in fact, the photograph is so graphic that when I went onto your page to look at the photograph, Facebook gave me a warning to tell me that this is a graphic photograph, and I have to accept. It is shocking that somebody owns these dogs, would have probably had the dogs run back to them and blood dripping from their mouths,
without a doubt.
So somebody knows who did this. Somebody knows their dogs yesterday. What time was this yesterday?
8 a.m.
8 a.m. yesterday morning. Yeah. It's not like Dollymount is packed at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. These people know their dogs did this. They know who they are. And obviously the Gardaí are treating this quite seriously, are they?
Yes, they are. They said any information to get back to them, they're going to they called me later that day. They're going to call me at the end of the week. They said this is ongoing. They went back and walked the length and breadth of the beach to try and find them. But I knew myself, those people are gone running.
Absolutely, yeah. You see your dog running back to you with blood dripping from his mouth, you're going
Definitely.
to know.
Without a doubt, covered in the blood.
Yeah.
Had to be.
Okay,
Yeah.
stay there for a second, Deirdre. Darcy just sent us a message on Twitter saying, crying listening to that poor lady, so frightening for her. It must have been terrifying for you, I have to say.
And I couldn't sleep last night. Every time
I'm
I
not
closed my
surprised.
eyes, the flashing images, Teddy crying and screaming, and me not able to do anything for him. It was like, he'd looked after me and I couldn't even look after him. But I tell you one thing that I did, and I'm glad I did. I fought, and I don't know how that came out of me, but I fought so much with that stick, bashing them and screaming at them to get away. I really never gave up.
And in reality, Deirdre, doing that, you were putting yourself in danger as well, that they could have gone for you. Yeah. Let me have a listen to this WhatsApp voice note from Mikey.
There's another type of dog that looks like them. It's called the Prez Canario. They're a big dog, like a Mastiff.
Okay, right. Well, we're not quite sure the precise breed, but what we are sure of, with absolute certainty, is that the owners, or the owner of those two dogs, knows exactly that their dogs are responsible for this. And I don't know if that would even mean anything to people who will let their dogs just roam around like that. And as I said,
I don't think so.
No, probably not. But sadly, Deirdre, this is something we've touched on numerous times in the last couple of years. Only a couple of weeks ago, we heard about a woman being attacked by a dog off his lead. Stay there for a moment. Let me go to Audrey. You're on 98 FM. How are you, Audrey?
Hi, not too bad, thank you.
Now, I feel a hashtag developing in my head, justice for Teddy.
Yeah, definitely.
Please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What did you want to say, Audrey?
Well, I'm very upset and annoyed that this has happened, because it's like I have a Wesley and she's 11 now, and it happened a few times to me, like walking personally with the dog. And I picked up my dog a few years ago, come back in 2011, and this guy in a van, I was screaming, like I was walking around the block, and I was about 200 metres from where I lived, and I was screaming my head off, and nobody came out to me. But this van happened to pass by, and it was like a golden retriever, but it was black and white dog. And I had the dog in my arms, and I had her had my back to the dog, and this van had stopped, and a couple of cars, and grabbed the dog. And another guy put me into his car and brought me home. And only for them, my dog would have been ripped apart.
Yeah.
I'd marked my back and everything, and bruises from the dog.
Yeah.
I never found the owner. Like, the dog was loose at the time, And I just think it's awful what happened to David's dog. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And thank you so much. And I was so mad about Teddy. He was so good. He was becoming like a little old man now. His hearing was getting, a little reduced. But for me, I can't believe his little life ended like that. Like, when they're not well and you have to maybe put them to sleep or something happens. But for Teddy's last minutes, it just went on for so long. He was tortured. He was tortured and ripped to death. And that's what kills me for Teddy. That's why I came on. I wouldn't normally, I wouldn't think of even doing this, but there was no way I could not come on and do this for Teddy, because
Deirdre, I really appreciate the fact that you're talking to us, and I know this is very difficult, and the more I look at that poor dog and photograph of him, it's absolutely horrific. And like you said, and this is the serious aspect of this conversation. If a dog has the ability to do that to another dog, literally rip the neck off the dog, that his bare flesh and bones are exposed, that dog has the ability to do that to a toddler, has the ability to do that to an adult, has that ability in them. And that's very, very scary that dog is or dogs.
He's like a weapon, a dangerous weapon.
Yeah,
and exactly. If he was let run free, he should have had a muzzle on him anyway. So they were down there, and, my gut instinct is I think they knew what even might happen. Those dogs are sitting there waiting for something.
Exactly. It comes across like just so preyed on your dog.
And we were unfortunately in the wrong place, wrong time. I went earlier than I ever do, and that's my regret. I'm only ever down there from half
it's not your fault, Deirdre.
No,
do you know what I mean? You could have been there.
But it is. I just keep thinking, why did I go?
No, but you could have been there at your normal time, and the same thing would have happened. Do me a favour, Deirdre, stay on the line there for 1 second, because there's a huge reaction to this. You're listening to 98 FM. This is Adrian Kennedy, and I'm talking about a savage attack, and that's the only way I can describe this, because if you see the photograph, and we will publish the photograph later on today, of Teddy, a little Bichon Frise, out for a walk with Deirdre yesterday, as she regularly does, on Dollymount Strand at 8 o'clock yesterday morning, and her beloved Bichon was savagely attacked by two bigger dogs, and they literally ripped the neck off the dog. And I could be more, well, I can't be more graphic than rip the neck off the dog, to the point that when the dog was brought to the vet had no choice but to put the poor dog down to put him out of his misery, because he was in that much pain and agony. Deirdre has clearly described the pain, the yelps out of the dog as he was being savaged. And then the two dogs that did it just sauntered off back up to the dunes wherever their owner was. And we need to find out who these dogs are. We need these dogs taken out of circulation, because these dogs have the ability and have proven their ability to attack. And the next time, it could be your child that they attack. We'll take a quick break. Lorraine and Edgar, I'll take your calls in just a moment.
98 FM's
Dublin Talks
with Des Kelly Interiors. For all the latest trends in carpets, vinyls and wood flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less. 98 FM.
One of the things that we have touched on numerous occasions over the last couple of years is dogs being allowed to wander freely off their lead, and we've had so many stories of attacks. Yesterday's is one of the worst I've heard for a long time. Deirdre is out walking with her two little dogs. One of them is a little teacup dog. The other is Teddy, a Bichon Frise. And they're walking along on their lead, minding their own business on Dollymount Strand yesterday morning, when they were approached by two dogs that we were not quite certain exactly what breeds they are, although Deirdre can best describe them as two Mastiff pit bulls or something similar. And she's put a photograph online of what she thinks, a dog that looks like them. Anyhow, these two dogs basically savaged her little Bichon Frise to death. He didn't die on the beach. He died in the vets later, but they killed him. And we're highlighting this story because we need to find out, and the Gardaí are treating this quite seriously, we need to find out who owns these dogs and have them taken out of circulation, because if they can do that to another dog and savage him to death, they have that bloodlust, they have that ability to do the exact same thing to a toddler on Dollymount this weekend when we have a bit of sun. Lorraine is in Swords. Lorraine, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Lorraine?
Hiya, Adrian. I just want to say to Deirdre, I read her post yesterday and I'm really sorry about her little dog. It's absolutely disgusting. And but there, another incident happened today in one of our local parks. It was up on the website this morning, an elderly couple walking their dog, and it was attacked by another dog. Not on the lead. So
now, the irony of this whole story, as Deirdre explained, is that these dogs actually had leads hanging out of their collar.
Yeah.
It just so happens there wasn't a human being at the other end of the lead.
Yeah, unfortunately. But even if they were on the lead, they should have had a muzzle on them. And that probably would have helped a little bit. But I think any person walking their dogs now, for their safety and for their dog's safety, to carry a pepper spray. And regardless, if you see that dog coming for you, you spray it in those dogs' eyes.
Lorraine, I have to tell you, though, that pepper spray, it's not legal to carry pepper spray in Ireland. Much not.
Bring something with you.
Yeah.
I put a pepper
Deirdre did have a stick with her that she beat the living crap out of the dogs, and it didn't stop them.
I know, but if you had like a perfume or a deodorant spray or something, the small ones, just have them in your pocket and take it out.
Listening to the way you describe the savagery of the attack, Deirdre, it sounds to me like nothing would have stopped them. The only thing that actually stopped them is little Teddy going limp.
When they thought he was dead.
Yeah.
God, that's when they stopped. They thought he was dead and dropped him. The two of them were at him at that stage.
So you're screaming and hitting them with a stick, or anything you tried to do wasn't stopping them?
Until the stick broke, and I'm screaming help, and it went on and on and on. They were just ripping and savaging him, and I'm just standing there, and I don't know why. It's not going to stop. That's the way I felt. It wasn't stopping, and I didn't know. I was hoping, please, Teddy, go quick, go quick.
That's horrific for you too, Deirdre.
Absolutely.
Experience that.
Oh, honest to God, the images flashing, him crying all the time. Oh, I'm just so upset for him.
It is.
His life ended like that.
It really is. It's heartbreaking to hear.
Yeah.
And what's even more heartbreaking is the photo. And the photograph, much and all as it is graphic, it just shows you how vicious this attack was.
I think that photograph is so important. It's so hard. I can't look at it again. But that is so important for people to actually really see what they did with their own eyes, to see that's exactly what happened to Teddy. You know, telling a story or giving details is not enough. You have to see what they did. Now, the vet said to me before we left, he said, is it okay with you if we take photographs of all Teddy's injuries of him? Because I think we should have that. And I wouldn't have thought of it. I said, thank you so much. They were great. They looked after him.
Which is consoling to know that they are treating this seriously, that they want to find out who owns this dog.
They'll have those photos. Yeah, they'll have those graphic photos. I'll probably never look at them or want to look at them. It's just too horrific. But I'm so glad that they offered me that option. So we'll see where that goes.
Let's bring in another couple of calls. And where am I going next? Edgar, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Edgar?
How's it going, Adrian?
Good, thank you. What did you want to say on this?
Years ago, we had a similar situation. I lived in the small town, and me and my brother and my mum, we walked in the country. So I had a little dog. I had no breed. It was just a mixture of some dogs. Anyway, he was my little fella, you know. And we're walking past this farm, like a farmhouse. There's two huge dogs running around, because nobody kept back there the dogs on the lead in the private houses. And they just run. I seen them running at my dog. And they grabbed my dog. One grabbed like by the neck, one like the back, and they looked like they want to rip him in half. Obviously, my mother panicked, started screaming. Me and my brother, we're only young fellas. We grabbed the big rocks at the side of the road. It was a country road, like the size of the bricks, and we just hit them dogs. And that must have saved my dog, you know. Well, we really hit it hard on the head anywhere. Like, I didn't care about them dogs because they were trying to kill my dog, you know. But well, my dog got a few cuts, was a bit bleeding, but he was able to walk. There was a bit limping, but that must have saved. We just grabbed a huge, really heavy rocks and hit them dogs, you know.
I'm so glad your dog survived that.
Absolutely. And the saddest part of the story is that Teddy did survive in that he was still alive when you got him to the vets, but he had no life left in him.
No. Whimpering. It was so sad, and he's never coming back. Anyway.
All right, let me just bring in another couple of calls, Deirdre, before I let you go. Tony, you're on 98 FM. How are you, Tony?
Adrian, how's it going?
Good, thanks, Tony. You're from Cabra, and you're saying that this is also a problem in Poppintree Park.
Yeah. First of all, I'd just like to say to Deirdre, I'm so sorry to hear what happened to her dog. I'm nearly in tears listening to her here myself. On Facebook recently, I actually seen the same type of dogs described. An elderly man was walking his Jack Russell in Poppintree Park, and basically they savaged his dog to death. Same type of attack in front of him, same type of attack described online. Now, I think it was on one of the DSPCA sites or something like that, so if I can find the post, Adrian, I'll send it on to you. I don't know if it can help out the guards or whatever like that. Well, apparently the attack was described exactly as you said online, and then the owners of the dogs who were present at the time just laughed and walked off.
Yeah.
Now, I think that is sad, disgusting, and vile. And I just think it's disgraceful. The guy's my own dog at home. And I swear to God, I'm nearly in tears myself here listening to this.
And as I said, Tony, the reason we decided, and I know it's been a fairly heavy show today, we were talking about the Anna Kriégel case earlier on, but the reason we decided to continue in a fairly serious theme with Deirdre was because we think it's important that we find out who owns these dogs because
they have to be held responsible.
Yeah, they have to be held responsible for this because, again, like as you said, Adrian, it's very important because what if the next time it's not a dog? What if it's a child?
And my worry with dogs like that is they have this bloodlust in them now, and they may have done this before.
Once they start, they don't stop.
Yes, that's the point.
That could have been poor Deirdre.
Yeah,
it could have went for her.
And Deirdre, I think you know yourself. It's the grace of God that it wasn't you.
Yes,
I can't believe they didn't attack two of them because you can't fight. You can maybe fight off one possibly,
but not
fighting off two. I can't believe that Teddy took the bullet for it. But somebody will know who has two of them. They're like twins. I don't know whether they are brother, sisters, or father, son, or whatever, but they're like twins. They're so similar, the two of them. Well kept, very strong, tough. Oh.
And you believe that the owner was hiding in the dunes, well, maybe not hiding, but was just chilling out in the dunes at 8 o'clock yesterday morning and couldn't have given a shit what the dogs were up to, basically. Excuse me, language.
So either doesn't care or wants that for the dog. Is training the
Why
dog.
have animals like that if you're not going to look after them properly?
Absolutely,
and make sure they're why you have
to not
animals
come out and help? How could you not come out and hear screams going on and on and on for so long?
Especially when I know screams of anyone, but particularly a lady. You'd be out to help straight away.
You would think, wouldn't you? But clearly the owners just completely ignored Deirdre's screams and shouts for help.
They don't give a shit. You're right.
I know, but it's for that very reason, Tony, that we need to find out who owns these dogs. And,
someone will know someone with two dogs like that.
Deirdre, the photograph, and we've shared your post onto our Facebook page as well, which is facebook.com/Adrian K and Jeremy D. But the dog on the left-hand side is the one that you say most resembles these dogs.
So I think that photo is saying the mix of the one on the left and the one on the right is the dog that was probably created as a mastiff pit bull or something. But it's the one that was on the left with the white face and the golden beige look, tall. That's what it was like. The two of them were identical to that one.
Okay, let me just bring in one last call. Elaine, you live near Dollymount.
I live near Burr Road Beach.
Right, okay.
The Wall Beach.
And what did you want to say?
Well, there should be a law brought out that all dogs, whether they're big dogs or small dogs, are muzzled when in public places, on a lead or not on a lead.
Sure. Elaine, when we have this conversation, I don't know if you recall a couple of months back, there was protests by dog owners in Fingal over plans to restrict where you can have your dogs off a lead and everything. There was bloody murder over it. So dog owners who trust their dogs don't want any restrictions on what they can do.
But dog owners trust their dogs, but nobody else trusts other people's
But what about
dogs.
the list, the dangerous breed list? What about that? They have to be muzzled or you will be prosecuted. You know, that, yes,
I agree, but you'll have people who own these dogs saying, my dog won't do this, whereas if there was a blanket ban or a law brought in.
Instead of a fine for no muzzle, they should be prosecuted and jailed for not having a muzzle on a dog that's on that list.
And I agree, and in theory you can be fined and all of that, but I've never heard of anybody who's ever been fined. Deirdre, can I ask you, just finally, because a lot of people are getting in contact with us, what Garda station is investigating this? Raheny Garda Station. So if anybody has any information on who may own these dogs, Raheny Garda Station is the one that is dealing with it.
Anonymously go and give a lead, a message if they're maybe afraid of somebody that they know that has some, I don't know, because we don't know who, what the type are that own it. But just go, even anonymously, give them a little tip off Raheny Garda Station. They couldn't have been more helpful. They were amazing to me.
All right, and the number for Raheny Garda Station is 01 666 4300. 01 666 4300. If anybody has any information on who may own these dogs, because the next time it could be your child that gets savaged on Dollymount. Again, Deirdre, I really appreciate you talking to us today. I think it's very important to highlight this. I think it's very important that people know what's around them as they go to, for a walk on one of our beautiful amenities like Dollymount, and people need to be aware. Be vigilant,
and keep their
absolutely.
eyes out open. The police said to me, if anybody sees them anywhere, what they have to do is ring them straight away. He said, we will be down immediately.
All right. Raheny Garda Station are dealing with this. Yep. Please get in touch with Raheny Garda Station, 01 666 4300. Deirdre, thanks very much indeed. And again, my commiserations on witnessing that horrible incident and on the loss of your much beloved dog, Teddy. Thanks very much indeed for talking
Thank
to
you
me.
very much. Bye. Bye.
All right, there you go. And like I said, I know it's been a heavy enough show today, but it just so happens that they were the issues we wanted to deal with. We'll have a little bit more fun on the programme tomorrow morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. And if there's something you'd like to bring up on tomorrow's programme, send us an email right now to DublinTalks@98FM.com. DublinTalks@98FM.com. Have a great Wednesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10. Barry Dunn is on the way. In the next hour, he's got some great music lined up like these.
I wish that I was good enough.
98 FM's
Dublin Talks
with Des Kelly Interiors. For all the latest trends in carpets, vinyls and wood flooring. Des Kelly Interiors, where quality flooring costs less. 98 FM.